On campus you memorize the walk that feels safe, and then one night the walkway learns your name. It's never shouted. It arrives like steam on a cold night, close to your ear, soft enough that you check whether you imagined it. Each of these stories starts like the 600 uneventful trips between a library and a dorm, and ends with a whisper that proves somebody wasn't guessing. People think college is crowds and noise. The walk home teaches you the opposite. Privacy is what stalkers shop for. And they pick it up right after midnight, beneath the blue lights that were supposed to mean comfort. I worked the late desk shift at the library 2 nights a week, the kind of shift where the building exhales after the last midterm panic. We closed at midnight, but the student workers stayed until 12:20 to run lost and found and power down terminals that refused to log off. My route home was muscle memory: south exit, across the brick quad, past the third blue light tower, angle by the sculpture that looks like a fork, then along faculty row where the lamps are tall and stingy. My dorm sat at the end behind a card swipe door with a stubborn hinge. 6 minutes on a normal night. 8 if it rained. That night, I left at 12:18 with a granola bar in my pocket and a battery at 12%. The quad was glossy from a mist that hadn't turned into weather yet. Sprinklers were off for the season, the grass still smelled like cold. I had one earbud in, not playing music, just there so I could pretend to ignore people. That's when the first voice threaded through the quiet. Not a word, just a soft hush, like someone testing how close their breath could land without touching me. I stopped at the base of the fork sculpture and looked back through the drizzled circles under the lamps. Empty. Motion light over the physics building side door bloomed and settled. I told myself it was HVAC, or a raccoon with better grades than mine. Halfway to faculty row, I felt cadence behind me. Not fast. Not careless. My steps on wet brick made the same little squeak each time my heel lifted. Another pair found the squeak and matched it a beat late, a respectful echo. I shifted to the opposite edge of the walkway. The sound shifted too, like whoever it was didn't want puddles either. I palmed my phone screen awake and opened SafeRide, the campus escort app, then closed it because I was already more than halfway and my pride had an 88 average. At the third blue light tower I stopped and pretended to tie a shoe, looking down so the fisheye camera on the pole could make me big. The echo stopped too. I looked at the convex mirror halfway up the pole. Distorted, grainy, it showed a darker grain moving where faculty row curved, then disappearing when the lamp stuttered. I stood and walked faster. I told myself that if I reached the dumpster by the dining hall, I'd cut through and be on my dorm lawn in 40 strides. That's when a voice folded itself into my name. Not shouted, just the last syllable spilled like a secret, 5 feet behind my right ear. It didn't sound like a professor, or my mom, or someone reading roll. It sounded like a person who had practiced saying it alone. I set my jaw and said, without turning, "You're on camera," and I held up my phone like a talisman. The voice answered with my nickname, the one only my freshman roommate used, pulled thinner, like someone stretching gum. My brain did the math faster than my feet. My name wasn't on my backpack. My student ID was on a reel clipped inside my coat. My social profiles were locked. The only place my nickname lived in public was on the little nameplate at the library help desk, white plastic, black letters, Maya, ask me anything. I had powered the desk light off at 12:14. Someone could have stood 10 feet away and read it like a menu. I pressed the blue light button. The pole answered with a chirp and a recorded voice that sounded too cheerful for midnight. The dispatcher came on 2 seconds later. I said my name, my location, that someone was behind me, that they knew my name. She told me to keep the line open and walk to the nearest lit building. She was dispatching a unit from 2 blocks over. I started talking louder than I felt, describing my route, saying street names like they were spells. The footsteps slipped left and kept pace in the grass. On my right the brick opened to faculty row. On my left the lawn ran soft and dark to the dining hall. I cut across the grass and the shoes behind me didn't like the mud. That bought me 10 feet. I reached the dining hall doors and yanked. Locked. Of course it was. I pivoted and kept the glass at my back so I could see the quad and the reflection at once. Under the faculty lamps a hooded figure paused at the start of the lawn and tilted his head the way don't worry guys do when they think you're being dramatic. He wore the uniform of harmlessness, joggers, campus hoodie, hands loose. The hood shadowed his face, his posture did the rest. I said, "I'm live with dispatch, stay where you are." He answered with my last name, said it like he liked the taste. Then he said the room number of my dorm. He didn't guess, he recited. The dining hall glass recorded my shoulders rising. The only public place that room number lived was the delivery tablet at the library's coffee kiosk where I grabbed muffins and tipped $2 in coins. If he'd watched me enough to learn my walk, he could have watched enough to see which cup tray went to which door. Headlights skimmed the far end of the lawn and blue bubbles chased them. The dispatcher told me the unit was turning onto faculty row now. The hood stayed still long enough that the scene could have been a training video, me at the door, my breath making fog, him at the edge of green, hands empty, nothing you could grab in a report but words. When the cruiser tires bumped the curb, he slid sideways into a gap between hedges with the kind of economy that comes from doing a thing 3 times before. The officer didn't chase into hedges. He walked to me first and asked if I was okay, if I wanted an escort to my dorm, if I could point and say which way the person went. He took my statement on the porch of the dining hall while the second car swung the quad and a third coasted the perimeter. We didn't find him. What we found was a sticker on the back of the help desk monitor, half peeled, with a QR code for the coffee kiosk's mobile order test page. Somebody had peeled it, scanned it, learned the format of names and room numbers, and smiled at how college had made the world polite. The next day our supervisor pulled the nameplates from the desk and printed new ones with initials only. Security moved a camera to catch more of the south exit. I started using SafeRide even for 6-minute walks. When the app driver rolled up that first night and asked who I was waiting for, I said my full name before I got in and he laughed softly like that was a test. It was. The whisper on the lawn still hung around my ears like a headphone I forgot to pull out. Hearing your name from a mouth you don't know is different than reading it on a screen. You can feel the practice in it. You can hear how long somebody waited to say it. My roommate Serena had her own version of the walk that learns your name. She was an architecture major, which meant the studio kept her long after the campus lights went polite. Her route home was the slowest, flattest line between the design building and the commuter garage, down the fountain path that smells like wet pennies, under the brick arch by the student center, over the little footbridge that clicks under bikes, then into the garage by the orange elevator that always smells like citrus cleaner and fear. She texted our group chat a thumb-up emoji at 12:04 and sent a picture of her model in the elevator mirror because that's how you prove to yourself that you're almost done. The campus at that hour wasn't empty. It was a set built to look that way. Vending machines glowed in alcoves. A janitor's cart left comet tails on tile. Sprinklers ticked 3 lawns down. Serena kept her keys between her fingers because that's what her aunt taught her, and she wore a backpack with a mesh water bottle pocket that always snagged on doors. She had a name that sounded like a song when you said it right and like a question when you didn't. No one said it when she reached the bridge. The water under it said the campus was pretending at nature. Halfway across the span, her phone buzzed with the softest notification Apple plays, the one you only hear if the night is listening, unknown accessory detected moving with you. She frowned and took one more step. The bridge answered with the wood's private knock. Another step, another knock behind it that wasn't hers. She turned to see if someone had joined, saw only the wet rail throwing back a version of herself she didn't like. She told herself the alert was a glitch, those stories make the news and then breed in your head. She kept walking. At the end of the bridge the campus path angled by a glass case full of intramural trophies nobody dusted. Reflections do things your eyes won't. In that convex world she saw a shape resolve and hesitate, like a cursor hovering over a send button. She stopped by the third blue light box, the one with a sticker that says "Don't press for a ride, press if you're scared." She pressed anyway because she was, and while the pole chirped and summoned a real human, a voice behind her said her name into the place where her hair met her ear. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It sounded like someone reading it for the 10th time, satisfied they had the syllables right. Serena said, without turning, "Keep your distance." The voice said her full name this time, first and last, and a floor number that belonged to the commuter garage. She flinched at the garage detail more than the name. The dispatcher came on and said they were sending units and to keep moving toward light. Serena didn't run, her running looks like apology. She walked with shoulders square and eyes on the orange elevator tower. The voice behind her didn't add anything. It didn't need to. She could hear steps match hers on the damp, the way your own rhythm on a treadmill haunts the person on the next. Inside the garage the air changed to that smell of dust and brakes. Serena stepped toward the elevator and then away from it because everyone tells you to take the stairs if you think you're followed. The stairs felt like a throat. She chose the ramp instead, walking up its spine while she kept the blue box on speaker and said her level out loud so she could hear herself commit to it. A shadow moved at the bend, then retreated, then decided it was better to seem harmless and came into the yellow light of the half-burnt bulb. He was campus casual, hoodie with a logo you don't need permission to wear, joggers, the kind of sneakers you buy the same day you try jogging and then never turn into miles. He put his hands out like he was helping a dog. She said, "You know my name because you saw it on something." He smiled and said it again, added, "Studio girl," which wasn't evidence but was a scent. She cut left between cars and aimed for the bright square that marked the attendant booth. The alert on her phone chimed again, the unknown accessory was still moving with her. She ducked behind a Subaru and emptied her backpack in one motion that made her semester scatter across oil stains. The blue box dispatcher asked if she was okay. Serena said, looking at a quilt of pencils and pens and tape and 2 rulers and a box of blades, "No, hang on." She dug her fingers into the mesh pocket that always snagged and felt plastic. It hid like lint. She pinched and pulled out a white disc the size of a coin from underneath the seam. It buzzed in her hand. Her name wasn't in that chip, but her path had been. She showed the disc to the campus officer who rolled up the second she reached the booth. He put it into a foil-lined bag like a magician put away a secret. Another officer walked the ramp and rounded the column where the hoodie had stood. No one was there. Serena filed a report, showed them the screenshot of the alert, let them search her bag with care that felt like kindness. The next morning she snapped a photo of the studio's laminated lab roster, names and time blocks taped outside the door so TAs could check attendance, and noticed a tiny dent by her name where someone had pressed a pen too hard at the edge. It was a nothing that felt like proof. She moved her schedule to daylight. The chip beeped one last time from the foil bag in the cop shop and then went quiet when they disabled it. Her walk learned a new song. The third was mine, months later, after the campus thawed and then regretted it. I ran lights for the student theater, which meant 8th-week rehearsals that talk too much about light as metaphor and then leave you to coil cables at 1 a.m. The black box theater backs onto a service alley that becomes a shortcut if you want it hard enough. I didn't. I took the colonnade instead, past the locked art studios where you can hear someone drumming on a desk like a stuck heartbeat. The air smelled like old coffee and spring trying too early. My plan was simple. Cut across to the language building, take the lit breezeway by the bookstore, and text home from the vending machine so my girlfriend could track my dot in that soothing way you do for each other without talking about why. My phone rang at the corner by the faculty lot, no caller ID in a font that looked like it was trying to keep a straight face. I let it go. It rang again. I answered and said hello like I'd been doing this for months, because I had. Silence. But not nothing. On the line I could hear a soft electronic chirp. It took my brain a second to place it, the pedestrian crossing at the end of the colonnade, the one that beeps 3 times and then goes solid for walk. The same sound reached me in real life 2 seconds later. Whoever was on my line was also on my block. I kept walking. I told myself I was dramatic, the camera above the bookstore cart was working tonight. My girlfriend texted, "Your dot just stopped, you good?" I typed back, "Slow group ahead, we'll call in a sec." The group didn't exist. I was making a shape to pour my fear into. That's when my name touched the air by my neck. Not the name my advisor uses. Not the one on my student ID. The one my grandmother put on a birthday card once and never corrected when my mom forgot to. It sounded wrong and perfect at the same time. It sounded like my kitchen when I was 8. It sounded like a practice run whispered into a pillow in the dorm across from mine. I said, loud enough to fill the breezeway, "Cameras see you." The glass gave me my face and the shape behind it, hood up, head tipped like he was listening for rain that hadn't decided to fall. He didn't answer. The no-caller ID call dropped and a voicemail badge bloomed. I didn't listen. I cut left into the language building's atrium because locked buildings are still glass fortresses. I wanted a door I could put between us and someone with a desk board enough to help. The outer vestibule yawned like disappointment and then admitted me. The inner doors were locked. I backed into the little triangle of space and dialed campus police. Footsteps padded past the glass, polite as church. The voice said my grandmother name again, almost laughing at now, a private joke that didn't need me. I couldn't see his face, I could see the tilt of a chin that knew its angles. The officer answered and told me to stay where I was, "Units en route, can you describe clothing, can you give me direction of travel?" I gave all the words I had. The shape didn't try the handle. It didn't need to. It leaned to set its breath on the door like a calling card. 2 minutes is forever when your options are a triangle. The cruiser washed blue across the bookstore's dark. The shape unpeeled from the glass with a compact shift and flowed along the colonnade without hurry. The officers saw a figure and saw nothing that could be written, because the face stayed under a hood and the hands showed nothing and the speed was walking and the crime was a voice. I filed a report and then finally listened to the voicemail on the curb because the officer asked if I had any recording. The message was 6 seconds long. In it you can hear the crosswalk chirp, then my footsteps, then my grandmother name breathed once, the mic clipping on the B, the way cheap mics do when they're too close to a mouth. I started asking friends to walk with me or meet me at the blue light poles like we were swapping batons. Security asked to move a patrol through the colonnade on the hour. A week later, the theater's loading dock door got a new swipe reader. The voicemail lives in my phone with a title that reads "Not Now." I keep it because people like to ask if you're sure about things that only happen once. It helps to have the store-bought beep and the breath that tried to borrow my name when the campus was pretending to sleep.